Good morning, fourth graders. Welcome to your writing lesson for today. We are nearing the end of our writing unit. So today's lesson focuses on how we can edit our story using a variety of lenses. And so first of all, what does editing even mean? Editing is when you make your draft look better. Up until this point, I've been saying it doesn't matter what it looks like. It's all about your ideas. Get your ideas down. And that has been the case up until today. Today is when we're focusing on making it look better. Now, of course, it's not really going to look the best until we publish it. But today, when I say we're making it look better, you can see that we're really working on some of that capitalization, the spelling, our punctuation, and really making sure that we know where our paragraphs are going to be. So today we're going to edit our drafts, clean them up, make them look better. You can see when we use our revising, which we've already done, plus our editing, it just makes our story go along more smoothly when our reader reads it, and it just makes our writing better. So it's an important step in the writing process, and so we're going to focus on that today. I want to teach you that before or after you edit your draft for other concerns like the paragraphs and the punctuation and everything else we just talked about, really the first thing that you want to do is check your spelling. And you don't have to be the best speller. I certainly am not. I say that all the time that I can't spell, and that's okay because we have tools that can help us. So what you want to do is you want to eye each word and ask yourself, does it look right? Even though I'm not the best speller, I can look at a word and I can say, well, I'm either certain that this word is spelled right or it just doesn't look right and I'm just not sure. So you want to reread the letters in that word to double check that those are the letters that spell the word you had in mind. And if it doesn't, then you want to use a resource like a family member or a dictionary or an online tool to help you spell that word. As you're reading your paper with that spelling lens, you are going to mark it, maybe just circle it, underline it, whatever works best for you. I personally would circle it, and I would check that word after I'm done reading through the paper. I'm not going to stop each time I find a word. I'm going to read through my story one time, and I'm going to mark all of the words that look like spelled. I'm going to circle them, and then I am going to go back to my resource and double check those words to make sure that they're spelled the right way. One little tip that I want to give you that I have found really works for me whenever I'm using this kind of spell check lens is I read my story backwards, because when I read it going forwards the way it's supposed to be read, I've noticed that I find myself focusing too much on what it's supposed to say. I know in my mind what I want it to say, so I just read it like that, and everything looks okay. But if you read it from the end to the beginning backwards, you'll notice that you find yourself focusing on each word and not the flow of the story. And so it may really help you when you're checking for your spelling. So that's just my little editing tip for you for today. So today you are going to reread your draft many times, and you're going to use these lenses. We talked about these lenses when we talked about revising, and now I'm talking about them again today for editing. So we just mentioned the spelling lens and talked about how we can use that spelling lens to help us, and that's the first lens that you really want to focus on today. After you're done with that spelling lens, you're going to use a capitalization lens. You're going to check to make sure that you have words that are supposed to be capitalized, like your proper nouns, capitalized. Words that are not supposed to be capitalized should not be capitalized. So you want to double check for all of that. Also, your punctuation lens. After you're done going through and checking for capitalization, then you're going to want to go through and check for punctuation, making sure that you have complete sentences, you have periods or question marks or exclamation points at the end of each complete sentence. You also want to check to make sure that you have commas in the appropriate places. So you're going to take a look for all of that. You're going to use that lens as well when you're editing today. Finally, the last lens that I want for you to use today when you're editing your paper is called the tense consistency lens. And basically what that means is that you want to make sure that if your story is written in past tense, then all of your verbs are using past tense. Or if your story is written in present tense, all of your verbs are written in present tense. It can get confusing to the reader if you're reading a paper and it says that you're confusing the tenses. And we're going to look at an example of that too in just a minute so you understand more of what I mean when I say we're going to edit using that lens as well. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at this little excerpt of a story, this little part of a story someone has written, and let's use our different lenses to help us go through. And like I said, when you're doing this, when you're using these lenses to edit your paper, you're going to want to do one at a time. And you may look at this right away and you see some capitalization or punctuation mistakes. I'm not saying don't fix them as you see them, but what I really want you to do is just take a focus on one at a time. So we said that we're going to do spelling first. And my little trick was to read it from the bottom up to then do our spelling check. So let's go ahead and let's look at our spelling check right here. If I start down here at the end, well, ding, 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 I'm looking at this word teacher right here. Teacher is not spelled correctly. So I would circle it. If I knew how to spell it, I would just change the spelling. So I could just add in my little A right there so I can spell teacher correctly. But if I don't know how to spell it, it's okay to just circle it and then keep going. And now I'm reading each of these words. I'm going backwards because I don't want to focus on the meaning of the story. I want to focus on the words, the actual words. So here I'm coming around, I'm looking at this right here, and I always get confused. Should a lot be two separate words or one? If I'm not sure, I'm going to go ahead and circle it, and I might need to come back to that because that might be a spelling mistake. And then I'm going to keep going. And then I see this word popular, and I know that that is just not spelled right. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to circle that word because I'm not exactly sure how to spell that one either, and then I'm going to keep going. So you can see how we use that spelling lens, right? Then I would keep going with the rest of the passage. Now I'm going to come to my capitalization lens after I'm done with my spelling lens. For that, there's really no reason to have to go backwards. I actually do need to know the meanings of some of these words so I can understand the flow of the story and if they need to be capitalized or not. The very first thing, if nothing else, what you should do is make sure that every single sentence starts with a capital letter. And as I come across, I see right here, not only is this a proper noun, someone's name, it's also not capitalized. And I know that this is the beginning of a sentence, so it should be capitalized. So I need to make that an uppercase L. And I keep going. Well, here, this is also, even though it's in quotation marks, that's a period, that should be capitalized. The N and no should be capitalized. Punctuation mark, this is the end. Okay, right here, I'm reading this. Lexi whispers, oh no. That's the end of a sentence. This T and then should be capitalized. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to make sure that I capitalize the beginning of every single sentence. As I was reading through that, I noticed some other mistakes that I'm like, in my mind, I know that need to be corrected. But remember, I'm focusing lens at a time. Just helps to focus what you're editing. Next, I'm going through my punctuation lens. This is where you want to make sure not only you have punctuation at the end of each sentence, but that you also have commas where commas are supposed to be used, especially if you're using dialogue. If you're using dialogue within your story, which everyone should have some dialogue in their story, you definitely need to have commas in there to offset your dialogue. So that's where when I was looking over here, I saw that right away that I needed to have some dialogue right here where it says he comes even closer. Lexi whispers, oh no. Well, if I'm having dialogue here, I know I need a comma to offset where Lexi whispers and offset my dialogue right there. So right there is a part where I need to have a comma. I also am going to come around and see, like I already put a comma right here. So I want to make sure that I'm supposed to have that comma there. We try to run as fast as we can, but being so popular, we don't run a lot, but we try. Okay, I did need that comma right there. It's right there. We try to run as fast as we can, but being so popular, we don't run a lot. I don't even know, I would probably even change up this sentence because it sounds like it's running on a little bit to me. And so I might even, we don't run a lot, and I might even stop it right there, get rid of that conjunction right there, and maybe come up with a different way of writing that, revising that sentence. So it's okay to still do some revising while you're editing too. If you end up seeing, well, like this comma didn't work, so I need to go ahead and change that sentence up, that's okay. That's part of using that punctuation lens. Finally, I want to talk about this tense lens real quick. So if it says, he comes even closer, okay? Lexi whispers, oh no. Then I shout, run. That's when we heard the bell. Ding. We tried to run as fast as we can. Okay, right here, that's where, and maybe that's part of the confusion with this sentence. I'm coming back to this sentence now. We tried to run as fast as we can. Those don't match. If we tried to run, it would be as fast as we could. It doesn't make sense. Our verb tenses don't line up. So when we're checking with our tense lens, you want to make sure that your verb tenses match up. Okay? So your focus for today, you need to make sure that as a good writer, you take your editing seriously. It's easy as a writer to sometimes just take this step and rush through it, but you want to take your time, read through your draft many times with a different lens each time. Remember to check for spelling, capitalization, punctuation, and tense consistency. But I did want to point out, if we go back to our checklist, if we go back to our rubric, these are the two main sections that we're really focusing on, but all of it helps the reader better understand your story. So go ahead and get started editing, and if you need to use your teacher as a resource, please feel free to reach out. Good luck, writers!